Systemic functional linguistics has a reputation for being difficult, and that reputation is mostly deserved. It comes with dense terminology, unfamiliar diagrams, and an insistence that grammar is doing far more work than most of us were ever taught to notice. So this is not a full explanation. It's an introduction or a way in. And it doesn't pretend that it's easy. So the central claim of systemic functional linguistics is simple, really. It says that grammar is not mainly about correctness, but it's about meaning making. For Michael Halliday, grammar was a resource for making meaning in social life. And every time we use language, grammar is doing three kinds of work at the same time. So let's start with one ordinary sentence as an example. That is, the teacher gave the student feedback. So there's nothing unusual about this sentence, just a basic statement. However, first, the sentence represents experience. In systemic functional linguistics, this is called the experiential meaning or the ideational metafunction. The grammar tells us who acted, what the action was, and who was affected. The teacher is doing something, and the student is on the receiving end. If we change the grammar, for example, the student received feedback, the event stays the same essentially, but the responsibility quietly shifts. So, in this sense, grammar doesn't just describe reality, it selects a version of it. At the same time, grammar enacts relationships, and this is what Halliday called the interpersonal meaning. If we compare the teacher gave the student feedback and the teacher should have given the student feedback, and finally the teacher might have given the student feedback, we can see that the information is similar, but the social meaning enacted in all three sentences is different. These small grammatical choices express certainty or doubt, authority or hesitation, judgment or neutrality. Grammar here is not about events, it's about stance, position. Finally, the third metafunction is that grammar organises the message. This is known as textual meaning. If we compare the teacher gave the student feedback with feedback was given to the student, we can see that both describe the same situation, but they guide our attention differently. One sentence foregrounds the teacher, and the other puts them into the background. Grammar quietly tells us what to notice first, and what to notice less. At this point, it's tempting to treat these three metafunctions as separate steps, to be applied one by one. However, that would be a mistake. In systemic functional linguistics, the ideational, interpersonal, and textual metafunctions operate simultaneously. To see that more clearly, let's consider this sentence. Unfortunately, the student failed to submit the assignment on time. The sentence realizes experiential meaning by constructing a failure. The student is made responsible. A standard has not been met. It realizes interpersonal meaning through evaluation. Unfortunately, and failed to position the speaker as authoritative and judgmental, even if politely so. And it realizes textual meaning by guiding interpretation. The framing comes first, and the action follows. All of this happens in a single grammatical act. The sentence constructs a version of reality, enacts a relationship, and guides our attention all at the same time. This is why systemic functional linguistics insists that grammar is never neutral. When grammatical choices feel natural, they stop being questioned. And once they stop being questioned, they become, well, powerful. Systemic functional linguistics doesn't ask whether a sentence is correct, as you would in a grammar book, for example. It asks a harder question, and that is, why this version of reality, this relationship, and this focus and structure, rather than another one? Once you start listening for that, ordinary sentences stop sounding quite so ordinary.